smashed it, man. You were the first episode, so you're like the OG original. You know what you're doing. Hello, everyone. Checking back in with you. It's the exam coach, and I'm serving up a old school format. In fact, we're going all the way back to episode 1. So back in 2015, I had a guy called Ben Warden on the show. He's a bit of an OG legend of the podcast, and I've got him back on today. How are you, Ben, today?
James, I'm good. It's a pleasure. It's good to be back. And man, how many episodes have you done? Crazy.
Yeah, I know. I did give you well, when I got into contact with you about coming on again, it was 216 episodes. So decent amount have been churned out since. But as I said,
Yeah.
we were talking before this, and I listened to the whole episode 1 back in the car on the way back from a trip I was doing, and just some of the things we covered were great, and it did have me in stitches, some of it. Some of the chat, some of the recommendations and pieces of advice, but I do genuinely think as well it was
Because
handy.
the advice was that bad.
Yeah, oh yeah, some of it was shocking, but other bits, I'm looking at now, professional latte drinking.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah, that's always good. I still abide by that one now.
yeah, it's a good one, isn't it? And I think
Yeah.
if a listeners, if you're listening to this now and you're saying, what is professional latte drinking, you should go back and listen to episode 1, because there's some serious knowledge in there, and also just some really good tips, I think. And I didn't have a clue what I was doing in terms of podcast interviewing. It was my very first one, but luckily, Ben had a bit of experience on the airwaves down at Exeter University, so he guided me through that, and we got through it, didn't we?
We did. It was good fun. And yeah, lots changed, James. So I'm sure I'm about to give a very conflicting interview.
Yeah. Good. Okay, well, let's crack into it. I'm gonna just I'll fire a few questions at you, and hopefully we'll get into some good detail and bring some value to anybody listening to this
Perfect.
today. Awesome. So first thing, what were you like as a teenager in 3 words? And before you get started on that,
Mm.
you can't use what you used on the last episode, which was in fact, it was 3 words. I offered nothing. That's what you said. Um, but you built on that over the course of the episode. You said,
Oh
"Look, I
dear.
did actually develop and build myself into something relatively worthwhile." But you began by saying, "I offered nothing," which I think actually, I think a lot of teenagers can relate to that.
Yeah, I think that was a phase, wasn't it? That was obviously a pretty bad day that you interviewed me the first time round. Yeah, I'm not going to be boring and say the same thing again. Yeah, yeah. I think I was a bit of a spot at school, James. So I think throughout my kind of late teenage years, yeah, I'd say a word like organised, um, diligent, maybe. But I would say naive as well, to kind of curb that. I think yeah, I certainly I was an only child, and yeah, I reckon sort of 17, 18 before I'd kind of gone off and found a bit of independence at uni and that. Yeah, I was probably a bit sheltered from it, and yeah, so I'd go with something like that: organized, diligent, naive.
That's a combination there. No, it's a good. I agree with you on the naivety thing. I think everybody, but you only realise that in hindsight. I think, that's the kind of the
Yeah.
definition of it, isn't it? That you, yeah,
Yeah, I had sort of hopes and dreams of being like a professional footballer or an astronaut
so did I.
or yeah, like a quantum physicist. And at the time I was led to believe that might happen. But yeah, you go off into the wider world, and you turn up for the football trial at university, and you realise that actually playing for the school B team isn't going to cut it in the real world.
20 nutmegs later.
Mm,
Yeah, I agree. I think it's one of those things where I don't think you should curb your ambitions. You just still, but I think it gets more practical, right? You understand that, okay, in order to do certain things, you have to be self-aware of where your skills fit in compared to
yeah,
everybody else's, and
100%.
you're not comparing yourself too much, but just being realistic about. And that approach is healthy in that you do actually end up achieving a lot more than you thought you would have been able to just by applying a bit of self-awareness and practicality. So
Definitely.
on that same vein, what is, I mean, in the last podcast we got a lot about, what you were grateful you did at school, and you mentioned that, you just threw yourself into everything, and that's one of the ways that you felt you built yourself up a bit and got a bit more experience and developed some skills. But if there was one thing at school that you think you could have done more of, or you regret not doing so much of, what would it be? What piece of advice would you give to a person between the age of 13 to 18 now who um, is maybe scared of missing out on certain things at school and doesn't want to look back on that process with any regrets?
Yeah, so I still believe that, James, definitely. I mean, it's school is a time when I was really fortunate, and I went to a school where there were lots of opportunities to try different things, and I think I'd like to think I made the most of that. And I think you only appreciate when you come out the other side into trying to be an adult. I use tryings deliberately there because I'm not sure I'm managing it very well. But you never have a situation like at school where everything's on a plate for you, and actually it's very easy to dip your toe in many different waters to mix up phrases
Hmm.
and yeah, and just give everything a shot. What do I wish I'd done more of? I was quite shy. I didn't. I always got this on my school report. I don't know whether you got like a recurring theme on yours, James, but I always got Ben is very he's very well behaved, but he should ask more questions. And I think that possibly sort of held me back a little bit in the sense that I was a bit frightened to kind of put my hand up and say if I didn't understand something. But yeah, later life you get over that hurdle and start to kind of be a bit braver if you like. But yeah, that would have been one of my downfalls for sure.
Absolutely. It's funny you mentioned that because I definitely had this period of, I just thought, I don't know if it was embarrassment or it was more me, a feeling of that it wasn't cool to kind of put your hand up and be really intrigued and interested, and that was
Definitely,
maybe
I
me
think
just being a bit of a sheep. What were you gonna say?
yeah, I think there's a sort of weird transition that happens, James. I don't know whether you noticed this. It's around like I guess it's around like 18, 19, as you go into your early 20s when suddenly like being good at stuff becomes quite cool.
Mm.
I think up until the
Hmm.
age of 16, if you like excelled in a particular area, you were a bit of a kind of goody two shoes or a bit of a freak.
Yep.
So yeah, I was the same. I was a bit hesitant to kind of ask questions or probe further when I was interested in something. Um, and yeah, I wish that wasn't the case.
Exactly. It's exactly that of number one. I think you just totally kind of get over it or come to terms with it that actually it's fine to be asking all those questions. Uh, and number two, whenever you do ask a question, you might be wrong or you might not know anything about it. I think also you get over that you're not actually that scared anymore, hopefully. And I think the quicker you can learn that, because I see, both of us now having worked in big companies where you've got people who are 50 and people who are early 20s. You see people who they will ask questions in meetings that if they don't know the answer to, they'll happily ask it, no matter how
Mm.
experienced they are, because actually knowing what's going on is really, really important to doing your job well.
It is
So,
quite important.
so
I've found that.
yeah, you can't just sit there nodding at something you just
Yeah.
have no clue about, because you
Although
will get
I mean
found
I
out.
do it. I
Yeah,
do it sometimes.
yeah. When
But
when
I've
there's a lot of
found
people
it's
in the
not as
room,
good.
sometimes you're like, you know what, I'll let that slide.
Yeah. I'll make a note of that
Yeah,
and
and
look it
ask
up on
ask someone
Google.
by the coffee machine later. You know that
Yeah,
thing that they were
exactly.
talking about there? I'm wondering if
Yeah.
you could just elaborate a bit more on that. Maybe
Yeah.
just unpack it a bit.
Oh, the amount of conversations I've had like that, James.
Yeah, you have a lot in your first couple of weeks on any job, I think. Um,
100%.
and all the what is it, acronyms and things that people have for stuff. uh
Blimey.
yeah,
Education, that's the worst one for acronyms.
yeah, plenty of it. And actually,
Mm.
that's again, we're flowing through the questions and I see here the next one I actually had in store was about revision technique, and about, because obviously with the exam coach we're doing a lot on revising and trying to fit that in with tech and smartphone usage,
Mm,
and just how life actually is, because it's not all sunshine and rainbows. You can't just smash out a 20-hour revision session every day and be fine. It's
mm.
got to be a bit more realistic than that. So was there anything at school that really helped you get revision and work done?
Yeah, I think, well, it sounds a little bit of an obvious answer, but I did kind of plan in advance. I was always quite good at that,
Hmm.
just mapping out my diary. And yeah, I mean, and even now, I kind of hear a lot of people talking about the different learning styles and whether you're kind of a visual learner or a kinesthetic learner or someone who likes to learn from audio, like many of your podcast listeners, I'm sure would resonate with. Um, but yeah, so for me, it was like tapping into the way that I like to learn, and that was quite visual. So I'd map out the week kind of visually, just so I could get a picture of what it would look like, in kind of blocks, and I'd just make sure I stuck to that and had plenty of free time throughout the day. And also in terms of the way that I revised, I'd draw a lot of diagrams and pictures and put them up on the wall or whatever I needed to do really to make it stick in my head.
Hmm. And with
Um,
that planning method, obviously
yeah.
when it helped you get a good amount of work done, but did it have any effect on a bit more of a woollier term, like how you felt about the week ahead?
Oh,
So,
100%. Yeah, I still actually use it now. So I've got like a piece of paper that's on my desk at home, and I've got my 7 days, and I've literally got like visual blocks of time for each of the 7 days when I'm working or playing tennis or going to the gym or whatever it might be. And obviously, like it changes daily,
mhm,
but what I like about that is I can see the areas of free time that I've got to just chill or do something for enjoyment, watch a film, whatever it might be. um, and that's definitely helped me with my kind of, I guess, my mental health, really, just alleviating stress to a certain extent and knowing the pattern of my week. And again, that's probably because I'm quite a visual person, and seeing it and seeing areas of the week where there's no blocks in there just makes me feel more comfortable. So yeah, I still use it today.
yeah, it's I'm a voracious planner as well. I use Google Calendar, so I just have it
Yeah,
popped up on my phone the whole time, and it's all color coded, and it's just great being able to see what is coming over the top of the hill, and
yeah,
it does relieve anxiety by just being able to see it. And being like,
yeah.
okay, I can see it coming, and now I can actually do something about it. I can make another plan. I can do another session of this to make Wednesday easier, or however it's.
Yeah, because I mean, I still think that the time around kind of my GCSEs in particular was probably one of the most stressful times I've had. Um, Maybe not in terms of like the challenge of each individual topic. Obviously, that gets harder as you progress through education. But I remember around my GCSEs having like 11 subjects to juggle, and a timetable of exams and all these different things. I think unless I was keeping on top of it in some way, I think that would have been incredibly stressful. And so I think it's not surprising that a lot of schools at the moment are having a lot of kids showing signs of stress or
Mhm.
needing to talk to a matron or a school counsellor or whoever it might be, um, about these sorts of things. And because it's not easy, I think it is quite an adult skill, really, being able to plan. But you're obviously expected to do it, yeah, a lot younger.
Yep, I definitely think, and I definitely think just things that people associate with schools, such as, oh, you have to be intelligent, whatever that, however you define that, in order to do well in your exams. I would actually say, in order to do well in exams, if you have a set of really simple but robust systems set up, like being able to plan well, like being able to motivate yourself day to day,
Mm,
having some decent revision techniques to hand that you stick to and are proven to be effective, just having those tools can really help you make progress and do well, way more so than someone who might be incredibly, they might get ideas and concepts very quickly, and might be very good in class, but essentially you are doing an exam, which is a totally different thing, I think, than being able to participate in a class situation and do well day to day. I think they're two
Yeah,
different.
100%.
Hmm.
I guess it's like it's the difference between a school being able to teach you what to learn and then you kind of having to figure out how to learn. It's not really something you necessarily get taught at school. And everyone has their own approach essentially. But I think in many ways that serves you almost better than the information itself if you can nail a process that works for you of how you take on board information and how you plan your time.
Hmm.
That is that sort of thing that you develop as you grow up that actually serves you well when you get into the workplace or I was going to say or beyond, but that's some way off for us.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree that it definitely does. And with that, I talk a lot about the smartphone because I just think it's so
You
integral.
love it,
I
don't
do
you?
love it. I do love it. I think it's really important. I think, and I just think it's such an opportunity, but it's also it can be just such a sticking point for a lot of people, and it is for me as well. I waste a whole load of
Mm.
time on it. I don't use it as efficiently as it could be, and I don't think it's all about efficiency either. You should just be able to have a laugh on it, have a look at a few memes, entertain yourself, whatever. But
Exactly.
is there anything that have you ever sat there with your smartphone and just been like, look, let me see if I can find out a better way to do things in relation to something that you care about. So it could be anything. It could even be social life. It could be, watching sport, just stuff that you
Yeah.
like doing. Is there any is there any ways that you think you use your smartphone or think about it that you think could be valuable to anyone listening today?
Yeah. So I am a bit addicted to my smartphone, I have to say. I kind of wish I could put it down and, like you say, stop looking at pictures and memes and all this sort of stuff. But I do think there's a value, particularly in terms of applications, that you can find out there. I mean, it's not an education example, but I've my New Year's resolution, James, was to watch more films.
Nice.
So I've been cracking through those, and I've found an app, and I can track and rate the films that I watch, and I can set up a list of those I want to watch.
Oh,
So
nice.
obviously that's it's a bit of a fun example,
Tee it
but
up. What app's that?
it's cool. Oh, do you know what? I'm probably the only person on it, James. It's called Cinemaniac.
Yeah. Oh,
But
very,
I
very
get
apt.
teased. I get teased at work, you see, because I set this up as my New Year's resolution because I basically only watched The Truman Show in my entire life.
Yeah.
I just hadn't watched any films, and they were saying, "Oh, you've got to get Netflix, Ben, and then you can watch it each night." And I just didn't feel that was right for me. I wanted to divert from the norm, so I've been ordering
So
in
niche.
bulk DVDs off musicmagpie.com, which still exists. It's where people like sell their old DVDs.
Is
So
okay,
I've been
is
buying
there
them for like £1 each,
yeah, got it.
and yeah, and then just tracking them on this app called Cinemaniac. Um,
Okay.
so that's
Uh,
pretty much been my life for the last 6 months.
Hey, that's cool. I mean, you're never going to get bored of films. There's
No,
plenty of them and plenty good ones as well. I'm interested to know that, that is an old school way of consuming your film content, if that's such a thing. But is there any kind of, and this might be me just being a neurotic kind of smartphone um,
yeah,
junkie person who, are you trying to, for example, with Netflix, they'll have the autoplay functionality set up, so they'll leave it on a cliffhanger. You've got 3 seconds
yeah,
or something to decide whether you're going to watch the next episode or not, and before you know
yeah,
it,
yeah,
boom,
yeah.
you're locked in. You're spending
Mm.
another hour there, and before you know it, it's the end of the day. Is there any kind of intent going on there to be a bit more deliberate about your viewing? So you've got the list, it's very mechanical in terms of how you're watching stuff. Is that a layer of protection against that automated
Yeah,
environment?
I think it probably is. I'm not sure I'd thought of it that way, but I think there's I think there's probably a bit of a fear now. We've all become so hooked in on the digital world, and there's a bit of a fear that we are kind of getting, pardon me, getting like locked in, if you like.
Mm,
How do you get yourself out of this loop of buying every Apple product under the sun? And how do you stop yourself from kind of getting in this never-ending stream of social media. Um, so yeah, maybe there is a discipline element to it, and I guess that does lead to the wider point that I'm making, which is that um, there are applications out there for most things, and most of them are free. And dependent on, yeah, the sort of person you are, having that available to you 24/7 is, I think, one of the key benefits of a smartphone. Um, I love a notebook, but realistically, being able to go out with your friends and just refer to something that you want to talk about that you've actually already got logged on this device is really powerful. So yeah, I think that's a massive plus point for smartphone.
Yeah, it's one of the. It's I sometimes use the analogy of, well, it's only in relation to social media because I think social media is a great thing. I think it's amazing how, when used in a way that's positive for you, it's great. Like you have some of your funniest moments, best moments, and you're able to connect with everybody across the world. But I see it like a digital bag of sweets. Like you
Mm.
wouldn't, you know, I love a few sweets every now and then, but I'm not going to be munching them down 24/7, 365 because I know that is not it's not going to put me in the
No,
best
in
place a year from
moderation.
now. Yeah, and I think it's the
Yeah.
same with the film stuff. Yeah, films are awesome. Love a film, but I'm not going to be, I'm sure that are you pacing it out? You're watching maybe one or two a week, or how are you doing it?
Yeah, it's pretty much that. One or two a week maybe.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I think I've done 15 this year.
Nice.
That's not bad.
You got a roll on. Loving
Yeah.
it. Well, that's a nice. That's probably one of the most positive kind of. You've got no kind of self punishment there happening. 'Cause most people
No,
with their
that's
New
what
Year's
I think.
resolutions, they punish themselves and they say, "I'm not doing this. I'm
That's
not doing
it,
that."
James. I
Yeah,
I don't punish myself. It's
yeah.
positive. Last year was more books, and I read 18. But the problem
Crikey.
is I look at this year, and I've read 58 pages. So it's not it's not working as a New Year's resolution, but I enjoy each year.
Yeah, you'll have a good year and a bad year. That's I think with most things
Yeah.
that's how it works. But hey, man, that's awesome.
Mm.
And we're getting a bit short on time, but I do want to ask you one more thing before you have to head.
Yeah.
Um, in your career right now, obviously we got a lot
Hmm.
of context on where you're at with that in episode one,
Yeah.
but 3 or 4 years on now, is there anything that you've learned in particular, and any tips that you have for young people wanting to get involved in the industry that you're currently in?
Yeah, definitely. Oh man, I think it's been a bit of a hectic few years for me actually, and I've changed role a couple of times. I kind of stepped away from the company that I was at, which was a sort of marketing brand agency. Had a little tryout in teaching, took a bit of time out, and then ended up back at the brand and marketing agency that I was at originally. Um, and I guess really what the process has taught me is that a I think never say never. I've left the job, and I've come back and ended up doing the exact same job, and thankfully I didn't burn any bridges the first time around.
Hmm.
Um, so I have gone full circle, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think I guess maybe 3 or 4 years ago I was probably thinking well ahead in terms of careers, and sometimes life doesn't really happen like that. Something will come from left field. In my case, it was like a family bereavement. In other cases, it might just simply be that you kind of get a bit bored of what you're doing, or you lose a client, and suddenly the role isn't quite the same as it used to be. Um, but I guess what I've kind of learned is just to kind of take each. I know it's a football cliche, you being a football fan, but kind of taking each month and year as it comes really. And yeah, I think it's good to have ambitions for the future that are broad, and you want to achieve this or get to the top of your game in this area. But I think sometimes it doesn't quite map out how you expected, and there is nothing wrong with that. Certainly, I'm very happy where I am now. But if you'd have asked me 3 years ago, I probably wouldn't have said this would be where I'd be. So yeah, interesting how things turn out. In terms of my particular role, so I'm a kind of account manager, and I do some copywriting as
Hmm.
well in a brand and marketing agency. So we have clients in education and charity sector and finance, etc., etc. Um, I guess I'd advise anyone looking to go into the field to really take advantage of any connections that they have within their family or their friends. It's a something that you get drilled into you, to be honest, by careers advisors. But often these jobs are partly about getting work experience, and that is much easier to do when you've got a connection within the industry. So relating back to being a professional latte drinker when I was younger, that's what I used to call myself. So I used to just organise lots of coffees with various people who knew a thing or two about marketing, and had jobs that I was interested in, and we just meet up, chat about it, and actually, on one or two occasions, they ended up getting back in contact and saying, "Well, Ben, we're looking for like an intern for a couple of months. Do you want to? Are you still interested? Are you still looking?" So it's easier for some people than others, and if you're not blessed with contacts in an industry you want to go into, then I'm sure there's plenty of advice online, and people you can go and speak to about it. But yeah, for me, it was very much about networking, um, and kind of learning as much as possible, really, in that kind of early stage. And that's made things a lot easier, because I think once you've got one job on your CV, it's easier then to sell yourself into another company.
For sure. I think that point you made about being young, and at that moment you have got all the leverage in the world to be able to ask for a meeting with someone who's pretty senior in one of these companies. Because if you're showing that initiative as a teenager, getting on LinkedIn, and it's so easy to do. You can just
Mm.
drop these people messages, write to their
Yeah, I
office,
think
go old school if you have to. It doesn't even have to be family, and ideally family and friends connected is a lot easier because you have got that in point that's very obvious. But if you don't have that, be
mm,
creative, go for it
and
online.
definitely, and I think yeah, I think probably the one thing to stress is that probably before I managed to get anywhere, like even a phone call or a coffee or a text message, I probably had like 20, 30 emails that were completely unresponded to.
Hmm.
So it is about being persistent and resilient as well, because uh, people can say, "Oh, how easy it was to get a job," but they are probably lying, or have had a particularly lucky break. It is really tough to get your head in front of people, because there's not a lot of time in the day,
Hmm.
to be honest, and you've got to kind of understand that and just try and keep plugging away. It will happen.
Yeah, you miss all the shots you don't take. To quote Michael
Very
Jordan, I
true.
think, and yeah, you're
Was
gonna
that?
get.
I thought that was your original.
No, oh yeah, it might have been actually. I'm a bit more famous than Michael Jordan, so I've
Mm.
um, unfortunately not. But yeah, the great man. Um, I think I love that quote about him actually, where I don't know how many he lists out every single free throw, 3-pointer, all the different things he missed, and there are ridiculous, and all the ones where he had to score in order to win the game and he missed. It was some ridiculous number, very high, and you see how many times he got rejected or failed. But ultimately, all that anyone remembers about him, that he was, arguably one of the best basketball players that's ever lived. So
That's really
yeah.
interesting. So he takes it. He takes a list of all the things he did just wrong.
Well, I don't think he's taken that himself. It's just quoted from his stats. That's what happened, and those are his stats. And he's missed an
James,
incredible amount.
why have you been taking a list of all the things Michael Jordan did wrong?
I think I just read it on a blog or something. I was just looking. I was just
You
looking
didn't
at it.
write this list.
No, I didn't. No, I don't watch that much basketball, and also I wasn't. I don't think I was. I think I don't know what age I must have been when he was in his prime, but I'm not sure
Yeah,
I'd even learned to write a list by that point. So it's probably still mucking
yeah.
around in year 10 or something like that. Anyway,
There are some mental stories about sports people though. They definitely have like a particular mindset, which is probably not one that I share necessarily, but yeah, it's almost like fear of failure kind of drives them on.
yeah, I totally think that you can learn so much from reading any autobiography of a sports person or anyone like that because it just
Mm.
requires incredible amounts of discipline and resilience and all the things you're quoting actually that are useful in a career.
Have you read the book Shoe Dog by the founder of Nike?
No, I haven't actually. Shoe
That's
Dog. Yeah.
well worth the read actually if you get a chance. I read it uh, for my last New Year's resolution, um, and yeah, it's basically his kind of memoirs of how he founded the company. And I think what's particularly fascinating about it is that this is like a multi-billion-pound company that everyone's heard of. And yet, I reckon the first three quarters of the book is all about his failings to set up his own company.
Mm-hmm.
He's been, he's failed multiple times and been practically declared bankrupt and made rubbish shoe products and almost by accident, there is some skill involved. Obviously, he's a very talented guy, but he stumbled across this Nike brand and look where they are now. So even the very best have a bit of a bumpy road.
Absolutely. Shoe Dog. That's on my
Mm,
list for a
it
read.
is.
I need to actually probably I do need to read more books I think at the moment. I'm doing a lot of I look for really detailed in-depth blog posts on the internet, not the, listicle kind of things, but
Yeah.
ones that go into real detail. And do think they're helpful, especially if you want to do something. But if you want to really go deep on a subject, and yeah, also the thing about books is they're stories, aren't they? They're nicely put together
Mm,
memoirs in this case of people's lives, which you can really get into and learn a few things from. So thanks for that recommendation. I'll go away and do that. And yeah, I need to do more positive New Year's resolutions as well.
do absolutely. I'm a massive proponent of them.
Yeah. Or just mid-year's resolutions. I like the idea of that. You just decide one weekend, you know what? I'm doing this
Mm,
for the rest of
yeah.
for 3 weeks, 4 months, whatever.
Download a smartphone app and you're away.
Yeah, for sure. Ben, it's been a pleasure having you on. Thank you very much for giving us the update.
No problem.
Anything else that you wanted to mention before? I know we've covered pretty much everything, but anything else that popped into your head that you thought you might want to mention whilst on here?
Um, I don't think there is, James, to be
Yeah,
honest. I think we've covered most of it.
polished.
I've plugged a book
Yeah, you
for
have. You've
someone
plugged the
who
book.
probably doesn't really need any more money.
Yeah.
So
True.
unless I'm on commission,
Yeah,
that was a
a
bit
cheeky
dubious.
commish on the side.
Mm.
We'll stick the affiliate link in the podcast description. If you have it, if you can magic it out of somewhere. Sweet. It was great talking, man, and yeah, keep cruising. I hope we can do this again sometime, and it's going to be great having episode 1, and I think this is episode 219 or something like that. But yeah, it's gonna be cool looking down the years at these episodes.
Sweet. Sounds good, James. Thanks for thinking of me.